Villagers, Dave Paulides, Can-Am Missing Project. That is your executive producer, Huck L. Berry. Huck, how you doing? Was it cold outside? We just came back. She went potty. Yes, it was 9 degrees outside. Very cold. Little wind. Wind chill about 4. And she could stay out there all day. Dad can't. She goes, come on, go outside, let's play in the snow. She's a little upset because I said, no, we got to go in. I'm sorry, girl, you still got some icicles on your nose. Yeah, you got some icicles on your nose. Yeah, you're a good girl. Yeah, you're a good girl. Yeah. Interesting thing about Pyrenees, if you ever get real close to one, put your hand on their paws. They're actually warm. There's so much blood that goes through them to keep them insulated. Super warm. You're a good girl. So, thanks for being here. This is the Can-Am Missing Project, the name for missing 411 research. And you are appreciated. Last couple of videos I've made have been about Florida and about some disappearances. And some of you made some comments like, oh, this doesn't mean anything. This doesn't match anything. Well, the last one I did involved 2 young boys. And it was as much a lesson in life as it was a disappearance of 2 people. This one is a disappearance of 4 people. Now, I wrote this book, Missing 411 Law, Land, Air, Water. Now, why did I do that? Because in the research I've done on missing people, I find that there's an exorbitant number of people disappear by air and water. And I think it'd be foolish to ignore those. And while you say, some people will say, oh, there's just mundane answers for this. Oh, really? Somebody said that about the 2 men who disappeared, the 2 attorneys from Florida. Oh yeah, that's just easy answer. One person jumped in, fell in, and the other one went in after him. Except that every boater anywhere knows you don't go into the water to save somebody else. That's why you have life jackets and life rings. Yes, you don't go in. And you never, ever do anything while the engine's in gear if somebody's in the water. And this boat was in gear. Yes. And some other people asked about the 2 attorneys, if there were fish on the boat. No, but they stated that they thought that they were coming back from their fishing grounds. And they never stated if there were fish on the boat. Otherwise, I would have found it. So, now this case is about 4 Florida fishermen on 1 boat. And they're fishing in the Gulf, just like the 2 attorneys. They left February 17th, 2024 from 8 a.m. from the Marina Park dock in Venice, Florida. So this is where they entered the water with their boat. This, about 50 miles away, is where the attorneys disappeared. It's where they went into the water from. And then they went off the coast. These guys left, went off the coast. Now the boat that these 4 men were in, very seaworthy craft. Center console. I would take this in the ocean in a minute. Very, very seaworthy. It was a 23-foot 1995 white sport craft, center console, Florida registration 9937HC. So, as I said, there were 4 people on the boat, 4 close friends. Angel Munoz, 38 years old, lived in Northport, Florida. Ruben Mora Sr., 54 years old, lived in Port Charlotte. Ruben owned a construction company, a building company called Four Sons Construction. He owned it for a long time. Julio Briones, 37 years old, lived in Northport. And Vargas Parra, 35 years old, lived in Northport. Now, Ruben, the man who owns the construction company, was listed as a diabetic, and he takes medication. Well, February 17th, 2024, the group met for a planned fishing trip in the Gulf. They met at the Marina Park boat ramp in Venice, next to the Venice train depot. They met at a little before 8 a.m. They put the boat in the water, and they were cruising down the inlet at about 8 a.m. This is a picture of their boat going down the inlet just after 8 o'clock in the morning. Everything's fine, no issues, under power, gonna have a great day out there. Now, they released pictures on two people on the boat. There's the two. Now, I did a real healthy background check on these guys. The men told the family that they'd be back that night. Gonna go out for the day, come back, just have a fun time with friends. All were fishermen, enjoyed the water. The boat occupants were all extremely, underline that word, hardworking men. As I said, Mora owned his own construction company. The three other men were all employed by a company called Safety Harbor Builders. Angel Munoz had worked for the builder for 18 years. His mom, his uncle, and cousin all worked for the builder. Now, somebody worked in the building trade with my dad when I was young, before I went to college. I can tell you, it is a hard occupation that pays very well. So I understand why the men did it. They're making good money. But any ideas that these guys were anything other than super hard workers, just trying to get by in this world, toss that idea away. 8 a.m. Sunday, the next morning, they hadn't returned. Families reported them missing to the police. Well, one of the families reported him to the Sarasota PD and the sheriff, and they contacted Venice Police Department and asked for assistance for them to check the parking lot at the Marina Park and check for the boat trailer and vehicle. Well, Venice Police Department went to the lot, confirmed that the vehicles were there and the boat trailer was there, meaning the boat had not returned. Just have to do your due diligence first. Law enforcement then contacted the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard requested an offshore search for the boat and the men. Now, by this time, the men had been gone more than 24 hours. The problem is that nobody knew exactly where the men were going to go fishing. Well, the Coast Guard dispatched helicopters from Air Station Miami and Clearwater. Coast Guard Station Cortez and the Fort Myers Beach sent cutters, the Diamondback, the Crocodile, and the Pablo Valente, out into open water to look for the men. Venice PD, Venice Fire, Sarasota PD, Fire and Sheriff's Office, Charlotte County Sheriffs, Lee County Sheriffs, Manatee County Sheriffs, and Florida Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and Cito Venice all sent boats out to look. The majority of the boats that were searching stayed close to shore. The helicopters from the Coast Guard were searching in a grid pattern offshore with their FLIR. And as I've told you before, when you're looking at water in the ocean on FLIR, it's one straight color. anything comes to the surface and it sticks out like a sore thumb. If there's a person out there, easy to see. Well, the police and the Coast Guard tried to ping the men's phones. And they found one last ping on one phone near a place called Siesta Key. And Siesta Key is just north of where the men went out. It's up here between Venice and Sarasota. Siesta Key is right about where that L is in last. Now this was a little bit of a conundrum to the search because the men went on TV and said that they thought the guys were going to go south. And they said, well, maybe they turned their phones off and that was the last ping, but they turned around and went south. Well, 8 p.m. on February 20th, again, the men went missing on February 17th. On February 20th at 8 p.m., the Coast Guard called off the search. Family made a statement that they still believe the search should go on, that the area should be searched further south, etc. Now, in the vast majority of all searches, families always believe that searchers should go on further. Now, this was in February. Water temperature is colder, much colder than it is in the summer. Water temperatures in that area could be between 60 and 70 degrees, meaning you would have less than 40 hours to survive. Practically speaking, near 20 hours would be a gift. So the presumption was by the Coast Guard that these men were already deceased. Now, Juan Mora is Ruben Mora's son. He said his dad loved fishing, and then that's what the group was doing. One of Ruben's friends bought the boat a week earlier and invited the friends out to go fishing. The Coast Guard claimed that their search for 60 hours and it covered 10,000 square miles, or about the size of Massachusetts. They didn't find the boat and they didn't find the men. Now let me preface this, that let's say the boat overturned out there. It would be very hard to do that. But let's suppose it did. That also would stick out on FLIR in a huge way. Almost you couldn't miss it. So what could have happened to the men? There were 4 of them, not a small amount. A lot of people were worried, and a lot of people were asking for private searchers to become involved. Now, 3 out of the 4 missing people worked at that same construction company that I told you about, Safety Harbor. Now, I can't say that the name of the company they work for didn't pass me by. Now, Gary Bingaman is the vice president of Safety Harbor Builders. That's what they worked for. He said that the majority of the men had been employed over 10 years for the company. Extremely reliable, very dedicated, good builders. He said that Angel Munoz was a best friend of his, and the family were a critical part of their business. Gary started a Kickstarter campaign for the families. And they raised, this is a month after they disappeared, $43,000 of their $50,000 goal. And he stated that once they reached the goal, it would be divided equally amongst the families. He also said if you had a home built between 2014 and 2024 by their company, that there's a great chance that these guys worked on that home, on your home. He was emotional, he was devastated, and he was hurt. And you know, in the construction business, it's hard to find people like that. So it tells you what kind of relationship these men had with their boss. Now I'm going to walk you through some things here that are important. Now, not only in Missing 411 law, but Missing 411 a sobering coincidence. I've told you about an entire series of missing people in and around water. Now, Missing 411 law, I highlighted several cases of people missing where investigations led nowhere. Very similar to this case. So after 60 hours of searching, the Coast Guard gives up. There were private searchers that kept going. They never found anything. A case I highlighted in Missing 411 law, I think is important. What it involved is a Navy blimp. And back years ago, they used those to patrol the California coast for submarines, etc. There were 2 pilots in the blimp over the Pacific outside of San Francisco. Somehow, unbelievably, the 2 men, while in the air, disappeared from the blimp. It eventually crashed in a city called Daly City, south of San Francisco. Nobody was on board. People said that they saw the blimp off the coast of San Francisco. It tilted up, went into a cloud, and they didn't see it. Again, but they weren't staring at the cloud either. They don't know when or where or how it ever came out of that cloud. The pilots were extremely experienced Navy men. Above water, in the air, disappeared. Now, while you're on a boat, several of you commented, oh, this could be a kidnapping. They kidnapped the 2 attorneys. Kidnapping is the most insane crime ever. You don't kidnap people because it's extremely hard to control people. Not only do you have to control them, but then you have to pray that somebody's willing to pay you money to get them back. And then you have to worry about getting the item without being captured. Because wherever they're going to place that item, oh, it's going to be under mass surveillance. That's why kidnapping anybody is stupid. That's why it rarely happens. Now, if people were killed on the boat and then thrown overboard, there would be minute amounts of blood splatter all over that boat. So small you wouldn't see it. People could think they're cleaning up the boat, but that FBI evidence response team would come on board. They'd be able to find it. But there was none. So nothing happened on that boat. And then other people said, oh, yeah, they must have been fishing. No, I told you. For these attorneys, the poles were in the pole holder. You could see it. Now, I did a long, lengthy search. There have been no capital crimes of boaters off the Florida coast. None. So it's not like there's a bunch of pirates running up and down the coast, killing and capturing people. If there were in Florida, there'd be a lot of shootings. Because a lot of those boaters off the coast carry guns in Florida. So that dog don't hunt. And many boats have cameras on the boats running all the time. So they can capture their fish catch, etc. Several posts on these cases on my YouTube talk about people living in that coastal area of Florida on the Gulf that said the amount of strangeness that they see and hear and get reported offshore there is enormous. But you guys don't want to hear that. That's the reason I'm posting these. The truth and the reality is Florida has a ton of strangeness. A ton. It has a very long history of anomalies. Now, If you still don't get what I'm saying, it's probably because you haven't watched my movies. Missing 411, The UFO Connection. That's the kind of the cornerstone to understanding a lot of this. You can watch it for free. I'm not asking for your money. Go watch it for free on Tubi. All three of my movies, Missing 411, Missing 411 The Hunted, Missing 411 The UFO Connection, are all free on Tubi. This movie, American Sasquatch, you can watch it on Amazon and on iTunes. If you have watched this movie, American Sasquatch, do me a huge favor, please. Go leave a review on Amazon. That would help us immensely. Now, I'm going to cut this video a little short because I just wanted to get this out there about these 4 men that are missing. Yeah, it was 2024, but now we have men that are missing in fairly close proximity to each other. The attorneys were out of Fort Myers, and the 4 were out of Venice. Distance about 40, 50 miles. Both were reportedly going off the coast to fish. Now, just because the last ping was there does not mean that they were actually right there. They could have been far off that coast, and they knew that. Just a coincidence? I don't think so. I encourage everybody to read the posts on the video. Don't make derogatory statements about other people's posts. Otherwise, I'll kick you off. But differences of opinion are great, and I encourage that. But don't make fun of opinions. Someone's opinion may be much more valuable than yours because the value of an opinion is only as good as the research on the topic you're commenting about. I say that regularly. And people say, well, you know what do you think? Somebody said this the other day. Oh, well, what do you think it was, Dave? Bigfoot that took those people? Obviously, you know nothing about me because I've never said Bigfoot took anybody. Nowhere. And if you've heard that somewhere, they're lying because I've never said it. Now, UFOs, entirely different story. Tens of thousands of people have reported being abducted by aliens. Whether you wish to believe it or not, probably has a lot to do about how much research you've done on it. But very credible, honest people have reported this. Now, in the UFO Connection, I did the research and I found somebody that had supporting evidence that he was abducted. And we highlighted that in the film. And in fact, the people in the UFO community said that this case I highlighted was one of the few that had evidence supporting that it actually occurred. There you go. He was by himself hunting in Wyoming when it happened. So, thanks for being here. Please share this video. And if you know of other cases of boaters that have disappeared, in Florida specifically, I want to hear about it. And in the past 6 months, I've highlighted other cases of people, Eagle Scouts, that have disappeared on a boat and were never found. They knew how to swim very well. So, be safe. Amongst everything else, be kind. Kindness is free. Paulides out.